Hello everyone! We're continuing with our video series on decision making, specifically about cognitive biases. Today we'll talk about a very common bias in paragliding, one that affects many beginner pilots: the overconfidence bias, or the Dunning-Kruger effect. In paragliding, confidence is key. But what happens when a pilot believes they are better than they actually are? This can lead them to take risky decisions without even realizing the danger. There is a psychological phenomenon that explains this, called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Simply put, the less experience you have, the easier it is to overestimate your own skills. And in a sport like paragliding, where conditions change rapidly and we face high levels of risk, errors can come at a high cost. This bias can be very dangerous. In this video, I'll show you how this effect manifests in paragliding pilots, and, most importantly, how you can avoid falling into this mental trap. What is the Dunning-Kruger effect? The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias that causes inexperienced people to overestimate their abilities. In other words, beginners think they know more than they actually do, while experts tend to be more aware of their own limitations. This bias was identified by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999. Their research showed that people with low skill levels tend to rate their own performance far higher than reality. And here's the problem. When you don't know enough, you don't even realize how much you don't know. This creates a false sense of security, which can lead to extremely dangerous decisions. In the world of paragliding, this can be fatal. Examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect in paragliding. Let's look at some real-world examples of how this bias appears in paragliding. Imagine a pilot who just finished their basic training. They've done a few flights without problems and start feeling more confident. They believe they already master paragliding and that their instructor's warnings about flying conditions are exaggerated. One day they decide to fly in stronger conditions. They don't check the wind properly because they think they already know how. They take off without fully evaluating the situation, and suddenly they find themselves in turbulence they don't know how to handle. Another common example happens with intermediate pilots who start attempting advanced maneuvers, like wingovers or spirals. They feel secure because they've seen other pilots do it easily, or because they've tried it a couple of times, and it went well. But doing maneuvers without proper training can lead to dangerous collapses, uncontrolled spins, or even stalls. In extreme cases, this overconfidence can cost them their life. Unfortunately, this type of accident is common among paragliding pilots, especially those with little experience. How to avoid the Dunning-Kruger effect in paragliding? The good news is that we can avoid this bias and fly much more safely by following these simple strategies. 1. Acknowledge that there is always more to learn. The best pilots are not the ones who think they know everything, but those who recognize their limitations and constantly seek to improve and learn from others. TWP. Seek feedback from more experienced pilots. If you only trust your own perception, you might overlook critical mistakes. An instructor or a more experienced pilot can spot errors you might not even notice. 3. Don't skip stages. In paragliding, it's natural to want to progress quickly and experience new emotions. But in this sport, each level brings new risks. Master each stage before moving on to the next one. 4. Stay humble. If experienced pilots warn you about something, listen to them. Experience in the air is invaluable, and learning from others' mistakes can prevent you from making the same ones. 5. Record your flights and evaluate your performance. Many times we think we flew better than we actually did. Record your flights, take notes, or write them in a flight log. Then analyze them. This will help you spot mistakes that you didn't notice while flying. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a mental trap that anyone can fall into, from beginners to experienced pilots. But new pilots, especially those who have just finished training, are the most vulnerable to this bias in paragliding. Recognizing our own limitations and learning with humility can be the difference between a safe flight and putting ourselves at risk. So next time you feel overly confident, ask yourself, do I really have enough experience to do this? If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about how psychology affects flying, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Leave a comment below. Have you ever overestimated your skills in paragliding? See you in the next video.